A critical error is an error which the OS cannot reasonably ignore. Jake Steinberg is a streamer, writer, and certified yapper. Complimentary. Peter Hunt Szpytek is a YouTuber, journalist, and certified yapper. Derogatory. These are the things they cannot reasonably ignore.
EA recently threw a party. Celebrities, influencers, journalists, to celebrate the upcoming release, to preview Battlefield 6, a game about war.
Game about guns. A game about shooting. I've heard.
Is it weird? Is it bad? Is it strange the degree to which we excitedly celebrate this release, which is so kind of enamored with one of the worst things that human existence has ever produced?
You know, like you listed a handful of like adjectives there. I think they were adjectives of like bad or weird. I think like bad. No, I think strange. I think you said strange, and I would also like I would like to throw in like complicated. I think it's messy.
Messy.
Because like Patreon. So oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, Jake. I forgot. I'm possessed by the ghost of video game podcasts. Hey, real quick before we get into it, we have a Patreon now. It's up and running. We've talked about it a little bit, and I just wanted to say like right at the top of the episode, just because I mean like, hey, Jake, what we're gonna mention at the end when everyone's already clicked off. We're like deep into it, you know, like
wow.
patreon.com/criticalerrorpod.
I love that. The show just took on a different vibe, and now I feel like I'm settling in with the people who have decided to listen to more than a minute and are like, I didn't even mind that interruption to tell people to visit the Patreon for this very show. I'm such a fan of the show. I'm enjoying it so much. But I think the topic on the table today is that we saw so many of these previews going around for Battlefield 6. Some more almost objectify of the concept of war than others. And I think you and I both come from a place where we recognize that the war game, the shooting game, this is a strong pillar of video games. And neither one of us is I think a person who is like, these games should not exist because they are bad. Like, that's why saying bad doesn't work for me. I think it's complicated because and you and I have talked about this before. But like this feeling of like, I enjoy playing shooting video games. I enjoy games with violence in them. I enjoy games that are about war, whatever. Like I would be a hypocrite to say that I don't like something like Call of Duty. Because I do think it is fun. But I also think that if you're going to like something like Call of Duty, I think it is important for us to examine what it says about us and what it says about like maybe our culture a little bit. And so the idea of doing a big sort of bombastic preview event for something like Battlefield 6 in the year 2025, which a lot of people have noted, by the way, a lot of people who attended, like journalists and whatever, noted like, hey, it's interesting that like this event kind of feels like something out of the past where like a lot of these sorts of things would happen in like the early 2010s. But now, like following the pandemic and following a lot of other sort of like changes in the world, like these sorts of events where it's like, hey, you're coming into a giant warehouse for a whole weekend to look at this game. That's kind of like not something that happens anymore. Right. And so like, how does that fit into our culture now? And how does the topic of Battlefield specifically sort of fit into that culture? I think that's like the interesting thing to talk about. And again, it's not that it's bad or wrong, but that it is just a complicated thing. You know what I mean? 100%. And I think the sense of why this game is important, and then why journalists are important, why media are important, what their role is in this ecosystem. I think that the way that these two things are in conversation, just given kind of the goals and subject matter of each, provides a lot of at least theoretical friction. Because I think like if I were to ask what is it about Battlefield 6? What is it about this release that demands such a big launch party where celebrities are in attendance and you're playing with streamers and influencers. It's a multi-day event. They're paying for people to fly out to Los Angeles, stay in hotels, providing for these people. Obviously, that is an investment in this game. But why does this game get that kind of investment? Is the answer as simple as it is the game that sells? And if that were the case, like, could we not give this kind of treatment to other games, and would we see a return on that investment as well? I think there's something about, why do we assume that this game is important? Is it because of the genre? Is it because of the sales history? Is it because of EA?
I think it's like, to answer some of that question, I think it is the way EA is trying to push it, because like EA needs this to be a big hit. I don't remember the number that they said off the top of my head, but like EA said that they need like an absurd number of people to play this game. Or I don't know if they said they need it, or maybe they said like their goal, or they want it, or something like that. And it was like an astounding number of people to be playing Battlefield 6. So I think that they are really going all in on the marketing arm of it for this event, which is I think a lot of where that comes from. But I don't know, like where specifically do you want to start with unpacking this? Do you want to start with just like talking about this as an event? Do you want to start talking about like Battlefield in 2025? Like where do you kind of see us getting started?
I mean, so first off, on your point about how successful this game needs to be, Battlefield 2042 was the 5th best-selling game in 2021, and EA did reveal that it was that failed to meet expectations. So being the 5th best-selling game of the year was not what they wanted that game to be.
Crazy.
So right, when we talk about how big this game needs to be, I think what they're aiming for is maybe the best-selling game of the year, or the 2nd or 3rd best-selling game of the year. And I think like where I want to start with this conversation is that I think that there are layers here that we will unpack, as I think you just alluded to, because some of it is about, my interest in this conversation is about Battlefield itself, what the game is doing, how it's kind of positioning its audience member. And then I think the other half that I'm interested in is the preview event. And how that's run and what the expectations are. And maybe kind of as people that you and I have both done preview events with like AAA video games. So maybe we have a perspective that can be added here. But I kind of think that the heart of this, and maybe what people are expecting when they click on this video, is a conversation that uses the word politics.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is something I wanted to talk about. Yes.
Yeah. So I kind of want to start there. I think you've been thinking about this a lot, just kind of how this game fits into the political space in 2025. Maybe there's a larger sense of friction that has come with the way the American perspective has maybe evolved on war, what war looks like, the costs of war, even since the last Battlefield game came out, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. So like, I think the word like politics, right, as a word is such a it's such a big buzzword, and I think that makes sense because it's important, right? Like politics are important. They are what shape our lives in terms of like legislation and things like that. And so like there is something interesting though with the intersection of like games and politics, where I think first of all a lot of people are like averse to this as a concept. A lot of people are like, a game doesn't need politics. It's a video game, it's separate. And like I understand what they're saying, but I also think that like there's a sort of miscommunication about like what all of that means. But I think that the miscommunication doesn't necessarily exclusively come from the person who is uninterested in having that conversation. I think there's a miscommunication in the way that is presented that I think is a little like disingenuous. So like this isn't a headline. I just like did a quick Google sort of search for this, but like the idea of like Battlefield 6 isn't political.
Yeah, right.
Is like something that like EA would try to say. That's their message, but like I'm not seeing that it is like explicitly stated.
Right.
And like that as a like sentence doesn't mean anything, because what are politics other than just like messages and ideas? Right. So like to say that like, oh, Battlefield 6 isn't about anything doesn't really work, because if there's a story or a conflict or anything like that, it is about something.
Mhm.
But what they are trying to say is that Battlefield 6 is not trying to make any political statements, which I think is probably true in their intention. However, in execution, it doesn't quite work like that. But I think the big problem comes from this miscommunication of, I feel like I've seen like journalists and people like that ask the developers of these like modern warfare shooters, like literally modern warfare, but also like Battlefield or whatever, any game that is set in a modern context that is about the United States of America shooting guns at people. They will like ask like the director of the game or whatever, like, is this political? And then of course the answer is no, because they're trying not to alienate anybody. And then everyone just throws their hands up and moves on. And they're like, well, I don't know. And I find that to be frustrating because to ask someone like, oh, is this political, just doesn't mean anything. It just doesn't mean anything. And also, like, what are you expecting them to say?
Wow.
Yeah, you got something to say. Go ahead.
I do. I love your intuition about does this game make political statements? Because I think that's such a funny. I see how somebody could sell themselves on that, but even within that claim, I've brought him up before. One of my favorite essayists, Matthew Salesses, talks about how craft is a set of expectations, and I think that it doesn't make any political statements is assuming it doesn't make any political statements to this kind of person. Yeah. And that kind of person is always conservative because it's the kind of person that is uninterested in straying from the status quo. We've seen it a lot in the past 2 years that there are games that are charged with the crime of being political because they include black people, because they include women, because they include they, them pronouns, body types, A and B. These are games that are political because they are making statements to someone who is conservative. They are confronting that person. But somebody like you or me, I don't know if those statements are maybe as strong. We don't react.
No.
So
like, that's the thing is the inverse of it. Okay, so like if saying, let's talk like the body types in game creators, like body type A, body type B. Yeah. Like conservative people who are like, I don't want politics in my games, whatever, see that as some big like political statement. And if the opposite, though, is kind of wild because I do not see a game that says male, female as some big political statement.
Right.
I just go like, oh, okay. And then I move on. And I choose the character I want to make and I move on.
They made a choice.
Yeah, they just made a choice. Right. And so in the same way that like, I also don't look at a game that's like body type A, body type B. And I'm like, wow, this is such a really meaningful politically motivated choice. I think it's just like, this is just the choice, and they are either opting to use more gender neutral language surrounding this because it is, at the end of the day, silly to just assign like this is what ladies look like and this is what dudes look like. Here we go. You know what I mean? Instead of just saying like, oh, you can be this or you can be that.
To be completely honest with you, my like read on that critically is sometimes I feel like a game is trying to tell me like, oh, maybe it is important that when you are situated in this world, we are trying to tell you that you are either recognized in this world as a man, or a woman. And that might have an effect. Whereas some games like a Monster Hunter game, it's like, that to be honest, Jake, that don't make no difference. We're just talking about the arrangement of the old polygons. And I'm like, and that's fine. Those are both valid choices.
Yes. So, but to that point though, it's like there's this idea of like, okay, is Battlefield political? And it's like, like inherently yes, because it's about the United States military, but also like the idea of just saying like, is this political is just a silly thing because nothing exists without politics. Right. And like that's just like a very entry level, like sort of critical read on literally anything. And it's this kind of thing, too, where I'm like, if you can't get on board with this, like with that simple concept, I don't know if I'm going to be able to have the rest of this conversation with you.
That's a huge barrier to this conversation. And I know I feel like every time I've tried to have this conversation, there is always going to be this person that will say, but I've played plenty of games that don't have politics. I've played games that are not political. So you can't possibly be right. Not everything is political. Political is something you put into a game. And, the easiest examples, of course, are like Mario saves Peach. Does that not present a worldview about assumed gender dynamics? Does that not present a worldview about who is worth saving? And there's
It's not saying something like super strong and profound, but it is saying something. It is saying what, like it is like has a message. And so like the idea of like, oh, like I don't want politics in my games. Like it's just a misunderstanding of the idea of like what that means, because everything is going to have politics in it because it's going to have a message about something. And when people say like, oh, I don't want politics in my games, what they mean is like, I don't want these specific messages to be brought up at all. Not that they don't want politics in their games, because politics in games is always good and cool. And like that makes for better games.
I completely agree. And I think specifically when you're talking about war as a concept, this idea that you can strip war of politics is to, I think, strip war of context, because, you know, war will always reinforce someone's values. And to tell you that war is something that under some circumstances it is to be consumed, not understood, is an ideology. And that ideology, I think, is a dangerous one that is artistically dishonest, and I think tells people that it's okay to enjoy the aesthetics of power without ever questioning power itself.
Well, it's like Spec Ops: The Line, if you're familiar. I know that that's been like talked to death and whatever, but like that is a game that uses the imagery of war, and it starts off as like a oorah, fuck yeah, like America kind of game, and then it sort of turns it on its head to say like, is this good? Hold on a second, are we doing the right thing? Which is like exactly what we're talking about. It flips that idea of like, just consume this, it's cool, it's fun, we're shooting people, into being like, right, but like, how come? And for who and why? And I think that, and I want to reiterate too, like this is a conversation that I think is interesting, because like, can you like shooting games uncritically? And I think the answer is yes. But I think then if you like, I like to play Call of Duty and whatever, and I like them in a terms of like a video game thing. As far as a video game goes, I think they're very fun and cool. But then when it comes time to like actually analyze, like, right, but like, what is this telling me? And what is this saying through what you're doing in the game and through all of this stuff? And then that's when I think like we need to put our thinking caps on a little bit, and like put our like school hats on a little bit, like analysis caps, to say like, here's what I can learn from what I think is being told through all of this. And so when it comes to like Battlefield 6, it is set in New York City.
Whoa.
An American soil.
Right.
It is a conflict, I believe, between, based on what I've read from these interviews and stuff like that, it is a conflict between the United States government and a faction called Pax Armada, which is a private military corporation, which exist in the real world, not Pax Armada, but the idea of a corporate military corporation, a private military corporation that exists in real life. And so like the big question then is like, okay, well, if you have the United States fighting against a fictional villain, but the fictional villain is something that is, you know, based in reality, like what does that mean? What does that mean about how this game is going to talk about the, you know, private military complex and things like that? What does it say about the United States and its relationship to that? Because obviously the United States has a like very, very storied and complicated relationship with private military contractors and things like that. But what do you think?
When you see these clips of buildings being destroyed in New York City, the traffic lights, all of this stuff crumbling, there is this, I think what you were saying, this kind of like uncritical appreciation where it's like there's a setting that we are familiar with. It is, you know, when Mario comes out in the trailer for Mario Wonder and he turns into an elephant and you go, whoa, I've never seen that before. That's cool. And then you take New York City, the same New York City that you've explored it in Grand Theft Auto, you've swung around it in Marvel's Spider-Man, and now you're seeing that New York City under siege by a military operation. There is an idea there that I think the what they want you to think is that this is cool. It is dramatic. It is, in a way, romantic, and it is the perfect setting for a story of heroism, right? How are we going to get back at these people? How could they do this to us, the undeserving Americans? How, you know, there's all of this stuff I think comes to the forefront. And I guess what I wonder is I really like the term media diet, because I think that the kind of analog there of a literal diet, I think we all understand how the food you put into your body affects you, and there's healthy food and unhealthy food. Yeah. And I wonder sometimes about this media diet that we've trained people on, particularly when it comes to war in our media, if consuming this stuff, no matter how uncritically, is creating somebody who is so distanced from the complexities of foreign policy, of imperialism, and I think distanced from the role of the United States in the greater world. And over time, what does it mean? This is a question that's kind of been weighing heavy on my heart, and I understand that this makes me a prime target of Jake is thinking about this too deeply, which I'll accept. But what does it mean when we look at this high fidelity graphical rendering of New York being blown apart, and the expectation is that it's not supposed to emotionally affect us, but obviously places around the world today, particularly in Gaza, we can see real videos of real people in real places being absolutely demolished and completely blown apart. And I would like to think that if that was the setting for this game, if you were playing as a member of the IOF and you were going into Gaza and you were doing stuff like that, I would like to think that our instincts would be like, oh, okay, well, that's inappropriate. We're sensitive to something going on here. And then, but like to have something like this happening to America and in New York is so like distanced from our perspective, and we can't. There's something weird about like when we're told to feel certain things and when we're told to feel others that just is confusing to me, I think, on the outside. Yeah.
As I've gotten older, like it's funny, like mindless action movies make me feel a little different now. Do you know what I mean? Like I used to, like, now whenever like when like extras die, do you know what I mean? Right. Where it's like just like hold the gun, wear the vest, whatever, but you're gonna get shot by the main guy. I like have a difficult time with these movies now because I get like, I don't know, like as I'm older, I'm like, that's a person. You know what I mean?
Right.
And like the movie's not about that, right? The movie's not trying to make you think about that. Like Die Hard is not trying to be like think about these were human lives. Like that's not what that movie is about. But like I have a difficult time divorcing that in my own mind when I watch something like that. And so I think like because of for the past like several years, I wake up and I open my phone and I watch a real video of, you know, real houses being blown up.
Yeah.
And real people being hurt and stuff, that like it just does like make my appetite for this sort of thing a little bit less. I'm interested in it a little bit less as an uncritical fun thing, because like, you know, New York City is not, you know, Gaza or wherever, but like watching a building get blown up, I am like that someone worked there, someone lived there, you know what I mean? And like I am also falling into the camp of like, Peter, I think you're thinking about this too much. And like I know I am, but also like imagery of war is inseparable from other imagery of war because it's the same language, right?
Man, that's really, I think, what I'm trying to zone in on here, because I think that there is a double standard rooted in empire. And I understand why. Okay, so when I remember being on Twitter maybe like a year ago at this point, and I saw people saying like, hey, it's actually not helpful when you repost like videos of kids dying, and I'm not trying to see that kind of stuff on my feed. I remember people posting stuff like that, and obviously it made me mad because the boots on the ground Palestinian people were saying like, actually one of the couple of things we do want from people is to share so that people know that this is going on. So, but that's you know, whatever. But I think that we have kind of an embedded, contradictory, and racialized cultural hierarchy of violence, because you can have the same images, you can have explosions, you can have collapsed buildings, you can have drone footage, gunfire. All of this is framed in one way in our entertainment. And then it's framed in a completely different way in global news coverage, depending on who is holding the gun and who is under rubble.
Yes.
If you tried to do a Battlefield game that took place in New York City that was like this shortly after 9/11, and nobody would have allowed that.
Never.
No
Never.
way, no shot. And something is happening here where the Battlefield 6 preview event happens, the trailer drops, people go, oh man, that looks sick, because the destruction is just an aesthetic. It is something to provide thrills, and it's extremely well rendered.
Yes.
Meanwhile, those same, I think, images of real collapsed buildings, actual drone strikes, wounded children, when they appear on a social media post about Gaza, they're met with a completely different set of expectations, and suddenly sharing that image is too graphic. You're politicizing the violence, and people call it trauma porn, and the viewer is expected to take it seriously, to weigh it morally, and to tiptoe around it carefully. But in games like Battlefield, I kind of feel like there's a degree to which this destruction is being exploited for the sake of a narrative that is constantly centering and empowering this patriotic hero that doesn't care about the civilians, doesn't care about the toll of anything else around it. It is all just a setting for oftentimes one guy to demonstrate how he's the best American.
You know, I think, like, and maybe if I'm just repeating what you're saying, stop me. But
no,
like,
please.
It is this sort of compelling thing that you're bringing up about, like, Battlefield says, don't think about it that hard. And I think, again,
that's
I think
helpful.
it's okay.
Yeah.
I think it's okay if you don't want to.
Right.
In the same way that I like to play Call of Duty multiplayer.
Right.
And from what I've heard about Battlefield 6, it seems like it's fun.
Right.
If you don't think about it too hard. But the second that you do take a step back and consider, like, hey, hold on a second, it does come apart a little bit. And it does come apart because it is exactly what we're saying. Like, is this fun? Oh my gosh. Like, when I see this on the news, this is not fun and cool. But again, just in the simple mechanic of you're playing a video game, don't think about it. It's fun and it's cool. In the same way that an action movie, it's fun and it's cool. But the second that, like, the action movie is like, but actually, did you think about what this might actually be like? It immediately is not that anymore. And so we have that line, and this is sort of, I think, what you're talking about. There's that line of, like, okay, in this one setting, it's fine. But then in this setting that is almost identical, it is not fine. And it is horrifying.
The right kind of war.
Yeah.
The right kind of war. Because when you place this game in closer proximity to 9/11, that is no longer the right kind of war.
No, not at all. Right.
And I think that there is something that the second it starts to make people feel uncomfortable, but the second it starts to challenge them, it's like the discomfort of war, a reality in which there are two sides, and maybe, I like that kind of stuff is like, we need to make sure that the violence in our game is distant, it is impersonal, it is unquestioned, so that our player feels good about it. So that I think that, like, I understand how that happens in the game. I think I'm worried about that very, I think, American ideology and what that kind of does to a person over time.
Yes.
With the media diet that I was mentioning earlier.
Yes, because I think when you said media diet, that's actually something I think I'm going to be, like, stewing on. No pun intended. But, like, stewing on for a long time, because I think it's important, right? Like, I love to eat Doritos.
Yes.
I love them. They're incredible in their many, many facets.
Right.
But should I only eat Doritos, or should I ever go, like, I should eat other food?
What do you like to drink in the same vein as this? Is there
no, nothing.
No,
water.
Okay,
I'm a water guy. Yeah,
right.
I'm a big water guy.
All right.
Eggnog. I like a nog.
Okay. I thought maybe there was something else, but maybe I'm thinking of someone else.
I think you're probably thinking of someone else.
All right.
But like Doritos, I love them and they're great. But it's exactly what you're saying. Like, you can't just eat Doritos because that's bad for you. and
Right.
that's it's not going to go well. And like I think Battlefield or Call of Duty or whatever is Doritos a little bit, and where it's like it is good, it is fun to have,
it is. And
yeah,
I think that makes sense, right? Because it's
but I think like at a certain point you do need to take a look and go like, should I only be eating Doritos? Probably not, huh?
Of course, and I think it is something that anybody can be like, well, I'm going to enjoy a little bag of Doritos right now. It doesn't affect me that much, and you're probably right. And I think it's an over time kind of thing when you're not well balanced otherwise, that it maybe becomes more of an issue.
Yes.
And it's hard to know when it happens. It's hard to know. You know what I mean? It's
yes. Yeah. The takeaway that I want there to be for this is like, you're not bad for eating Doritos.
No.
You're not bad for playing Battlefield or Call of Duty or whatever. Like, it's not like bad to do. It's just that like, I think we also just have to say, but like, if you are down with that, you have to be able to have that conversation about like what it is, you know, or if you cannot have that conversation and are uninterested in having that conversation, then you should not be out there saying we don't need to be having this conversation.
And I think then to kind of transition into the other half of things that I wanted to talk about in this episode too, is that I think that like for the average person, I am completely on the same page as you. And I like don't take it as a sign of offense when people enjoy a military shooter. Like I'm like that's like goofy. That's like fake politics to me. But I do think I have a bit of a different lens when it comes to journalists and media. And that is not, and that is not to say like I'm painting with a wide brush and everybody's doing the exact same thing and everybody's committing the same sin. But I do think it is worth observing, just kind of, is there a different role and different responsibility, a different level that people in this position are supposed to ascend to when covering these kinds of products, especially when I think historically the role of journalist and journalism is to provide a counterbalance to corporate objectives and corporate greed. So there is a degree to which if anyone is going to kind of lead the conversation about the politics and objectives of EA and of this game, I would kind of hope that that was happening in the media and not just kind of like something for everybody to kind of figure out on their own in their own time.
Yes, 100%. I agree. So something that we have talked about that like I want to address here too is like, so some of the influencers that were there got EA put together like a little like little like highlight reel for you where basically they had this like I'm forgetting the name of what this technology is in like filmmaking. It was like used in like the Mandalorian TV show and stuff like that, where it's like a big LED wall. What's that? Do you know what it's called?
It's in the back of my mind. They also used it on the How I Met Your Father show. Thank you.
Did they really? That's so funny.
Yeah, I know. Very weird. Very weird. Yeah.
The volume is like it's just a big LED wall that like projects stuff behind you, and it like looks really realistic, and it's like basically like a set that you can create using I think Unreal Engine 5 actually. But they had this sort of set up at this Battlefield 6 preview event, and they did like filmed a little like 30-second, less than that, like 15-second like little highlight reel where they give influencers the chance to put on like a military helmet and hold maybe like some grenades, little vest, and like basically stand in front of like the exploding buildings and like missiles getting launched and whatever, and they're like throwing grenades and it's exploding and whatever. And like this to me is where I start to go like, hey, this is where I start to feel like there is a problem where I feel like the participation. Let me go ahead. Yes, please.
Let me take this. Let me take the baton. Because personally, I find it to be pretty much a disqualifying activity to participate in.
It feels very distasteful to me. Yes,
I cannot imagine being at this event, seeing this going down, putting on like a phony little military outfit, and being like, "Oh, this is so cool! I am in an active war zone." especially since there are people in that scenario right now who would give anything to not be in that scenario. And I'm not, listen, I'm not trying to be Mr. Captain Woke over here and scolding people. Everybody can do whatever it is that they want to do. But like for me personally, to be a journalist, that you are there, to do your job, and your job is to like report on a video game, whatever that means to you. I don't personally see how participating in this very strange performative act is anything other than I don't even know what the word is, but yeah,
it just to me feels kind of shitty.
Yeah,
and I would like to say this too. Like I didn't see any journalist specifically doing this,
right?
Because I would hope that they would understand, like, hey. I saw influencers doing this, and like influencers are obviously like held to a sort of a different standard, I think, than journalists, based on like what that relationship between an influencer and like PR and an influencer and like a studio or publisher or whatever is. That's not to say that I think that they should be held to a different standard in terms of like human decency, I would say. I don't know, like, and this is where I start to struggle, because like I don't know if I'm the friend that's too woke. I know that this is what you were sort of saying. We're like, just for me, like, I'm just not removed enough from the like imagery of real violence and real like war for me to feel comfortable and like cool with this idea of like, oh, let's cosplay it. Let's play a little bit in real life.
And this I think is what's important to me is you're talking about being removed from how somebody like becomes that kind of person. And I think that is what I'm most interested in too, because it's like in one aspect, it's like sad that for me personally to like see people participate in this. But I think the more overwhelming feeling is this kind of ickiness that we cultivated a culture in which this person was produced, in which a person shows up and doesn't find it distasteful. Like, where did we go wrong? Like, that's my impression. Yeah,
because again, it's not like the problem for me doesn't lie within like the relationship between an influencer and like publishing or whatever.
No.
Like in the same way that like the relationship between like journalists and publishing is different than PR than influencers in that, right? Like I get that. It's like, to me, just like as a person, as a guy removed from me who is a journalist, who has a journalism degree, right? Like that is not what I'm talking about here. It's like me as a person seeing this, I'm like, I just think this sits poorly. This is in poor taste, in my opinion, given where the world is right now and sort of like how everything feels.
I completely agree. Yeah, 100%.
Cool.
And I do think that there is a kind of contemporary ideology that we are hitting on that I think is really prevalent in the culture, where when you make criticisms of this kind of thing, there's often this refrain of they're just having fun. They don't know, maybe the like they're you can't really blame them for what they're ignorant of. And I do think there comes a point where you can no longer make that excuse. And I do feel that maybe with this particular self-serving objectification of war, there is a moral imperative to have some kind of position or opinion about this. And to not is not ignorance or an accident. It is a personal choice, because you want to enjoy the party that EA threw for you more than you want to extend solidarity to literally anyone.
Yeah,
and that's a problem for me.
It just feels bad. It just sits wrong with me.
Yeah.
And like I also like I understand what you're saying. Like, hey, we're at essentially a party that EA is throwing, and like
you want to be the cool guy.
I don't want to be rude. Yeah, but also like I just don't see a world where I would ever do this. Like I just don't see a world where like I could possibly feel comfortable and good with that. And then not only that, but then to also post it online for people to see is it just doesn't sit right.
To even end up in a world where this is something that they set up, I think is a
like that's the other part too. Like I get that they're trying to do their whole thing and trying to like make like a photo op for influencers, and like, well, what do you do for the photo op for Battlefield? Well, you put them in the Battlefield, but it just doesn't sit right with me from conception to posting these things.
Yeah, that's okay. See, because that's like a really interesting PR challenge then, right? Because it kind of begs this question of, if I was in charge, how would I do this event? You know, I was looking at photos of the event, and they've got like military trucks and stuff on site.
Yeah,
you can go up to, you can take a picture with, and it's virtually the same thing as when, you know, Nintendo had an E3 booth, and there are like little mushroom blocks and all of this stuff around that are like, oh, it's from Mario's world
setting. Yeah,
that's the setting. So it does kind of beg that question of how could you do something cool without it being gross? And now, honestly, now that I'm saying it, I actually don't think it's as hard as I started to be like, oh, that is a hard challenge. But I don't know. Is like sitting in the cockpit of a plane not interesting and cool and like a good photo op? Like, I guess it is weird, but the active destruction that was happening in what we were observing, I think, was the thing that made me recoil the most.
Yeah, where it's like, hey, it's me, guy with a grenade. Like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, it just
who presumably will be
me
throwing that grenade to kill people.
What is a grenade for? Yes.
Yeah.
It exists to kill people and to destroy things. And like, I don't know.
I mean, I think that the answer is that there is a moral kind of what we were saying before, a purposeful political ambiguity, a degree to which they don't want to make any statements. And maybe if they made a really clear statement, like there was something that they were chasing, all of your media could be centered around being in service of whatever that statement is. So
yeah,
if you are right. So even if what that statement is a little like propaganda-y, it could at least have a motivation in the way that like a lot of political art has motivation. So yeah.
It reminds me of like, do you ever play like Homefront?
Yeah, sure.
Or what's that movie? Red Dawn.
Oh yeah.
First PG-13 movie, by the way, from the MPAA. Doesn't matter. I know. Those are like, basically the premise of those is the same premise between the game and then the movie. Basically, it's like North Korea invades all of America all at once, which is a silly concept, but whatever. It's a video game movie. Who cares?
Right.
And then it's about like fighting back, dispel North Korea out of America.
Right.
And it is like a conservative pipe dream, right? It is like this idea of like, oh, you know, our amendment rights to own weapons finally come in handy. Finally, this is what it's all for. And it's extraordinarily conservative. However, I think that by having a specific situation like that, it does make you go like, I think it's exactly what you're saying. I think you can then point it in a direction at the very least and like help people like understand like, okay, well, in the context of our video game, we are talking about this one specific thing, you know? And I don't know if that's better necessarily. I'm not willing to die on this hill. You know what I mean? Like, this is just like off the top of my head. Like, I think that having a specific pointed thing does help it instead of it help how the game feels, because then you go like, oh no, it's talking about this one specific situation. Whereas I feel like with Battlefield 6, because of the ambiguity about like, yeah, well, we don't really want to pick a, you know what I mean? Like, it is this like fictional conflict that we have completely made up based off of nothing, based off of no preconceived notions of anything. It makes people feel a lot more, it makes me assign the imagery and stuff to the things that I recognize, as opposed to saying like, oh no, like what if this happened? Does that make sense?
No, 100%. And okay. I think the way that
I'm not married to that, by the way.
No,
you know what
this
I mean?
is, I love this as a creative writing exercise almost, because there is something about kind of grounding that perspective that now that we talk about it, I'm like, wow, I guess there really it's almost like a bird's eye view of war. And I almost wonder if it would be advantageous of them to maybe spell out explicitly, like, this is not what war is, but this is how war feels to one person in one moment, and to zoom in that way. And to have it be about the overwhelming, you know, that to me is like a experience that I think a game is probably adept at demonstrating.
Yeah. So I also would like to point out too, like, I am not like blind to the fact that I am literally sitting in a Captain America chair, which I did get for free. But like, it's, if I were to pick out a chair, would not be branded like this. But whatever. But like I understand like the irony there a little bit, right? Of like this American patriotism and me going like, I don't know about all this while I'm literally sitting in this, right? But like, I hope that people are able to hear sort of like what we're saying and like get what we're getting at about how like a lot of this is not a judgment. You know, it is just a way of like us like exploring how this stuff makes us feel.
100%. And I think that the reason why I kind of felt compelled to talk about this was because of how kind of like personally affecting I found some of the coverage to be, but also kind of separate from all of the politics and kind of separate from the war and all that stuff. I've grown to become a little tired of the PR preview media blowout.
Yeah.
And what I feel is bought enthusiasm, and obviously not bought enthusiasm from the perspective of I am paying people who pretend to be unbiased for the sake of for a positive opinion. That's not what I mean. But I do think that this kind of and I know you and I have different perspectives on this, but the rolling out this multi-day event where you fly people out, you pay for their food, you do all of this stuff, and then everybody comes back saying that this game is incredible, it's amazing, it's Battlefield is back, and I know exactly how this game is going to go. It is going to come out. Some people that probably play every Battlefield game are going to talk about it for a week, maybe 2 weeks, and then in the larger gaming space, we will never hear about it again. And I feel that this is the exact same arc that every game goes through when the review embargo hits these days. It is the practice in FOMO. It is and I think that you have these events that are powder kegs for hardcore gaming enthusiasm. Whether it is you were given access to go to this event where it is largely social and you get to see all of these people you know online, and it's a very fun event, you're taken care of, there's all of this stuff is contributing to the generosity and the feeling that I think you go into a game with. And I feel the same way about review codes sometimes. I think that the excitement of a review code, of playing a game, of it being the only thing that you're focused on for 2 weeks, can sometimes distance you from what it's like to be a normal person and how it feels to really like play a game in a authentic environment. And so you so often come out with these over exaggerated impressions of everything because your experience of interacting with them is inherently over exaggerated.
I think it's interesting. There's an article that just went up on Kotaku literally right before we started recording this that we both read, titled "What It's Like to Go to a Big AAA Video Game Reveal Event in 2025" by Zach Zweisen. And basically in it, he just pretty much like beat for beat breaks down like, here's what happened when I was in LA for this. And it's like 3 days long and like reading about it. Mm-hmm. Like I've never been to anything like this. I've been to preview events. I've been to preview events that kind of like lean into this stuff, but I've never been to something that is like multiple days. I've never had my like hotel paid for, I don't think, by like, no, I certainly haven't, by a publisher or anything like that.
Right.
Reading this, and this isn't the point, I don't think really of the article, but I read this and I'm like, damn, that sounds like a lot of fun.
Oh yeah.
Damn, that sounds like this would have been a blast. You hang out, you play video games, you're like running into like Brie Larson and Travis Barker and the girl who won Love Island. Like, you know what I mean? Like always
Amaya.
I don't know what they say. Amaya Papaya, I've been told. America's
right,
sweetheart.
Yeah.
But like you're running into your friends too, and like you're like food trucks are there and whatever. Like this all sounds literally so fun.
Yeah.
You're staying in a nice hotel, whatever. But like then when it comes time to like sit down and say like, actually now it is time for me to write critically about this thing, it is difficult to maybe separate that from this sort of specifically. Because like, okay, so we talked about this before we started recording. I got to preview Assassin's Creed Shadows and what's the game? Star Wars Outlaws at Summer Game Fest a year ago. And it was really cool. Ubisoft had this like historic hotel in downtown LA that they had rented out. In the basement was all the Star Wars stuff. They had people walking around in stormtrooper armor. They had like blue milk, which was delicious. That I drank a lot of. They had like all sorts.
You could
of
go on the
Star
bike.
Wars
Remember
snacks. I did.
Yeah.
I got on the bike.
Yeah.
There's some bad photos of me. Whoever was taking the picture of me did not like me that much. I feel. But yeah, like 100%. Like it. We did that, and here's the thing. It was me and friend of the pod, Christian Macias. We had a really good time playing Star Wars, and so he was doing the write up on Star Wars. He did the write up, and he wrote that he liked it, but he didn't like it because of drinking some blue milk and hanging out with stormtroopers. Conversely, we then go upstairs. We're eating sushi and mochi and like Japanese snacks and watching a guy literally make swords, like forge swords. And we saw Assassin's Creed Shadows, and I then wrote about how much I did not like the preview of what I saw of Assassin's Creed Shadows. And I think I personally am able to divorce myself from an hour of hanging out and like having a nice meal.
Mm-hmm.
I'm able, for me, I just think that's pretty easy to just go like, thanks for the meal. I'm really sorry. I did not like your game. However, I think when you have a full 3-day experience of free food and free Red Bull and hanging out with Travis Barker or whatever, gosh, I would love that. Actually, you know what? Give me the other Blink guys. That's really what I want. Travis Barker, he's like the most famous one, but like, I want Tom DeLonge there. I want to talk about aliens with it. And it doesn't matter.
He's married to the Kardashian, right?
He is. That's why he's like a famous producer and everything too. It's wild that he's the most famous one. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Maybe we should start a Blink-182 podcast, Jake. I have a lot to say. But like that is completely different than just like an hour of like cool, some blue milk, play some Star Wars in like a cantina set, and then when you go write your preview. Yeah, you're gonna remember that and you're gonna think about that. But like, in my opinion, I think it's really easy to divorce myself from those sorts of things. Whereas like, damn, a full weekend of hanging out with my friends, staying in a nice hotel room, eating all sorts of nice LA food trucks, playing this game that sounds like it is pretty fun. I just think it's really difficult to be able to like have a more objective opinion, not to the fault of the writers. I'm not saying that they're not well equipped to be able to try and do that, but I do think that it is just a little bit, it's difficult to actually like pull off in a way that is entirely honest.
And I actually feel more strongly about this than you do, because I think when you say like, oh, I am able to divorce myself in that experience, like here's the evidence. I went to an event where they wanted me to feel good, and I had a negative, and I had maybe a negative review of that preview. To me, when I look at that event, what I'm saying is, but the thing that you are writing about is inherently inauthentic. It is inherently not what the person who plays this game is going to experience. So
100%.
They are showing you something that is not the game. Correct. And it's like I 100% believe that the people who had positive reviews of previews of Battlefield 6 or whatever, I 100% believe that they had hugely positive experiences. But I think that so much of any entertainment is how it fits into your life. And I think when you are completely taken care of, when you have a group of friends who are all with you and you don't have to coordinate going online and playing together, you're at the event, you're playing with people who are cool, you're in the, wow, this is a really fun thing to do in this environment. That is
100%.
There, like the fact that anybody thinks that they can divorce themselves, and they would say the same thing about these games if they were given a preview code and told to stay at home and to log on over a 3-hour period. I think you are lying to yourself. I do not believe you. There is a sense of importance, of gravitas, of so many things that you are bringing to this game right now. And I understand everybody wants to say, I am the unbiased reviewer, blah, 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 blah. I get that nobody is buying your opinion, but I think that they have more access to influence you in so many different ways when you are at something like this. And I think in ways that are natural to be influenced. It would be weird if it was not better in that environment than it would be at home. It would be so strange. I just don't believe it. I just don't believe that like what we're talking about is 100% the game when any preview comes out. I have a hard, and I've done it. I've done the previews. I've gone to the events. I've been there. I know exactly how this works. There is a sense of something that is even the sense that your opinion is important. When I get invited to go play Splatoon early in New York City with the Nintendo people, and I'm gabbing it up with Bill Trinan. there is a certain energy that I'm filled with that is informing my approach to the game, craft a set of expectations that is informing my approach to that game that otherwise wouldn't have been there.
I agree. No,
okay.
You're right. I do agree.
All right. Yeah.
And not super related, but still semi-related. What do you think of something like Summer Game Fest, where like it's you're previewing a bunch of stuff? Obviously, they're like the publishers that get like big setups that like basically do this in microcosm. But like, what do you think of like? Okay, I show up to Summer Game Fest and they have bagels for me.
Yeah,
it's not the Blumhouse Games bagel station, but I am still getting food and whatever. And then like I go play a game. Like obviously like. Do you think that is similar conflict there?
I think for me, it comes down to, does your preview have, what is the purpose of your preview? Mm-hmm. I've seen many different previews online. I've seen previews for, hey, here are the top 20 games we saw at Summer Games Fest, and it is a slideshow of games. And each one of them is essentially a reworded PR statement of what the game is. It is simply awareness. We are doing a quote unquote preview. We are seeing these games for the sake of cluing in our reader that they exist. And in that scenario, I do think there is a degree to which the game previewer is acting as an arm of PR. That is how I feel. People are free to disagree with me in that. If your goal in a preview is to have a sense for the sake of your audience member about if the game is good or not, to kind of intuit from this early access version if the game is good or not. A lot of people are going to disagree with me on this as well. I find that the people who are this clued in that they're reading video game previews already know whether or not they are going to like a game. I think most people, I don't find previews to be that much more revelatory than a trailer, personally.
I agree.
And I know that's a hard thing to hear. I get it.
I do agree.
And as somebody who has done previews, I think people are maybe underinformed about how much of what you're saying in your preview is pretty much dictated by what they wanted you to see and say.
Because also, like, when you're doing a preview, you're kind of like writing about like what you hope it'll be like. Do you know what I mean? What you kind of think, based on a little bit of whatever.
Definitely.
Because I mean, I've written previews for games that I'm like, this seems like it'll be good. And then you play it and you're like, oh, this one part, if you played it for 15 minutes, it would probably be all right. But which is what I did. But then like when compounded over the course of 30 hours or whatever, you're like, no,
And my favorite preview, my favorite kind, the kind that I think I would, if I was teaching the class about how to conduct the video game preview, I would tell my students, I would say, make the writing, the story you are telling, interesting on its own, separate from whatever it is you're trying to communicate about the game. Show off a little bit. Have a little personality. Tell a little story. Tell me, can you set up a beginning, a middle, and end of something you want me to take away about the game, but can you tell it in an interesting way? Because the fact of the matter is, the preview gets thrown in the trash the second the reviews are out. So if you cannot produce something that does not retain value 3 weeks later, when the review embargo goes up, what are we doing? We're just part of a marketing plan. We're literally just part of a marketing plan. So so anyways, to circle all the way back to your Summer Games Fest question, what do I think about stuff like that? I find that it is not great. I find that the work being produced and just kind of what you are able to do with the limited access you have and the time you have, it feels like, okay, I've got a great comparison for you. Okay. I was just in New York City.
Yep.
My wife was at a work event. It was a summit. It was a conference for all of these people that work in her field. And I get there and I cannot believe how many thousands of people in this New York City hotel have the name tag, are there for this event. And I go, there are so many people at this event that I think there are too many people, to the point that there is no shot you would be able to network with the one person that would actually be helpful to you. And it started to make me think, is this some kind of scheme by the hotel chain of all of these rooms being bought for this week to come to this event and do this thing? And I just am asking myself a classic Batman trying to solve a mystery question. The first question you ask: who benefits? Who benefits from this? Mm-hmm. And I think with something like a Summer Games Fest, I am having a hard time being like, I see huge benefit on the end of the consumer.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's, this is kind of a separate topic. That's kind of what the video I made about Summer Game Fest is about.
Right.
About, like, I don't think this is for people at home. And I think people at home think it is, and I think Summer Game Fest thinks it is. But at the end of the day, everyone I talk to who goes to Summer Game Fest is like, this is not for the people at home. This is for us. For whether that is networking connections, whether that is like, hey, we're getting our game in the hands of press and we're establishing a press relationship. You know what I mean? Like that, whatever. I don't think that, Summer Game Fest is, I don't think, aimed at helping people who are at home.
I mean, I will wholehandedly, I will easily admit, 10 toes down, I went out of my way to go to a Summer Game Fest when I thought it would be valuable to me and what I was doing in my career. And it was. It straight up was. Like, I treated it like a practice in networking, and I was successful. And like,
Jake, the reason I know you is because you were there, and because I was there. Because we were both doing that same thing.
Yeah. So I don't know, and I don't feel like bad admitting that. I don't feel like I shirked my journalistic duty.
I don't think so.
And I think so often this conversation like comes to that. People they aim this gun at like the worst thing the video game journalist can do is like lie about whether or not they liked a game. And I'm like, grow up, guys. Like, who cares? I don't know. Like, all right, so a preview came out and they said the game was good, and then 2 months later the game came out and they said the game was bad. Woo! You know, I'm like, all right, who cares? I don't know.
Jake, can I read you an essay I wrote?
I would love to hear. I gotta come down.
You go ahead and relax. Let me. I also tried to shorten this up based on our previous attempts to do this. So I'm curious what you think.
Oh, lovely. Please.
If video game review scores don't matter, then why do I always look at them? It's not a new or revolutionary take that video game review scores are a silly way to measure, or worse, grade art. But despite my disdain for the review score inflation that we've been seeing in the last few years, despite my disdain for the want of games to be put in quantifiable boxes, despite my disdain for the mentality that review scores aid by turning video game releases into a parasocial team sport, I do follow how games score pretty closely. This is not a part of myself that I'm proud of. I hope no one listens to this part of the episode, and I certainly hope that no one leaves a comment down below about it. Jake, that was a call to action. It's what big boy YouTubers do.
Right.
Patreon.
That's good. Patreon.
But it is something I've been working on confronting within myself. Why do I care? I'm certainly not the type of person to tweet a picture of me holding an unopened game case at a publisher, congratulating them when they release a game that I assume will be good without ever even playing it. I'm not the kind of person who needs the things I like to be liked by everyone else. However, I think a part of me likes to imagine, if even for just a second, that my opinion is the correct one. It's shameful, I know. But when I see that Dead Space 2 scored a 90 on Metacritic, I like to feel, for only a moment, that I'm right for liking it. Conversely, I shamefully like to get irritated when I see that a game like Horizon Forbidden West scored an 88 on Metacritic. Why do critics like these pandering, boring AAA games completely devoid of any character or life? I smugly ask myself before looking around to make sure that no one saw me. I don't actually care. Like, actually care. But I do like to check. And I hope, Jake, that no one ever finds out about this.
Wow, Peter, so vulnerable. So vulnerable to this week. Oh my God.
I know.
Yeah, the scores. You like the scores.
I like, well, it's weird because like it's not like I even like them. I just check.
Right.
I'm someone who I'm like, if you write a good review, I don't want to see a score because I should just know how you feel about it. I think that's a really, really simple, simple sort of summary of just how I feel about critique, right? And writing about games like this. But even so, when I'm reading someone who I really trust and who's a good writer that I'm able to like totally get what they mean in the body of their work, I still check. I still get to the end of the review and I'm like, oh, well, and you gave it a 4 out of 5. And what are your 3 little pros? What are your 3 little cons? I don't know why. I still look. It's shameful.
The 3 little pros, 3 little cons is always fun. That's a good, yeah.
I think part of it too, and maybe I should have written about this a little bit more, is that like I like to see how people, like what things matter to people. So if you write and you say you really hated the writing of the game, and then you give the game 9 out of 10, I'm like, okay, then that clearly is not a big deal breaker for you. You know what I mean? It just gets to be a little pip in the con section.
Video game reviews are hard for me. They're hard for me.
I agree. I
find the writing to be maybe some of the least interesting writing about video games, if I'm being completely honest.
100% agree.
Yeah, and I know it's where a lot of maybe the primary amount of, I guess I don't really know. I assume that's where a lot of interest lies. But there is this kind of expectation and format as to what a video game review is, to the point that it is hard to escape. If I was hired by somebody, if they said, Jake, we're going to hire you you're going to freelance review this video game, I would largely adhere to the kind of things I think I'm supposed to do, because at the end of the day, I'm like doing a job for somebody else. And I think that there is this kind of, there's this like spiritual issue with like what video game reviews are in our culture right now, that it's like 80% of the review is just listing what a game consists of. And then, I've been, over the last like 2 months or so, a few months, I've been writing for a website called The Indie Informer, run by Jill Grote, by the way. Yeah.
Lovely human being. And so it's funny, I've been doing previews for a handful of different indie games. And then tasked with me this week is I'm writing a review for a game. And I've been thinking about this. And something that and obviously this is helpful because Jill is extraordinarily flexible and like interested in me writing about games and whoever is writing for the Indie Informer, but like writing about games in the way that person wants to write about them. And that like there is no checklist in terms of like your review needs to be this. Something I've worked on with my previews that I've been doing, and then now with this review that I'm working on, is I do my best to describe the absolute bare minimum about a game.
Cool.
I cannot stand when a game review is like, here are 3 paragraphs about the story. Here are 3 paragraphs about the mechanics. Because usually, more often than not, the story does not matter for what this review is talking about. If the story was really important, then I think that potentially matters. But then when it comes to like the mechanics, it's like you're just describing a third-person shooter.
And when they're talking about story, they're talking about plot, which
just the surface level, like
you can talk about meaning and like what something is about, but like when you talk about here's like the setting, like the premise, it's like Jesus Christ, like one trailer could have done the job of half of this review.
I realized, and because I heard this do you know Big Joel or Little Joel on YouTube?
No.
YouTube channel you would fucking love, Jake.
Cool.
Big Joel.
Not Little Joel?
Well, Little Joel is like the extra. Little Joel is like he'll put up like a 5-minute video as opposed to like an hour long sort of video essay. Yeah. He's delightful, but he basically will sometimes answer like Patreon questions.
Okay.
In his video at the end of his videos, and someone asked like once like how important is a summary, and he basically says like not at all. Don't summarize. Because if you're clicking on my video, I assume that you either know what I'm talking about or are smart enough to intuit and put it together if my writing has done its job. And I was like, that's a really good answer. So I've worked really hard on that. And like I was thinking about this because I was analyzing for a job application a video I made about Wolfenstein. And I was like, damn, I don't mention BJ Blazkowicz, the main character of these games, until like minute 22 of a 24-minute video. Do you know what I mean? Like he comes in at the very, very end. Like that to me, it's like, this is how important the characters and plot of this game are for what I'm talking about.
There's there's kind of at this point rote advice, but maybe I'll share it here. Maybe this is new to somebody, but I think if you were to write a video game review and if your first few sentences were a retelling of something you did in the game, I saw this, I used this ability, I got over there, then I found this, that pretty much would serve to tell the reader everything that is important to what you're about to say. And it's funny how like there's so much distance sometimes between the video game review and the actual playing of the game. As if there is a objective reading that the reviewer witnessed and is now reporting back on, rather than something that was experienced with input that can be relayed to another and told in a story that is not the plot of the game. That was a lot. Did that?
No, 100%. Okay. I also I think like a lot of times game reviews, with the way that they're structured, paint the wrong picture of what a game actually is. I was really frustrated with reviews for that Indiana Jones game that just came out. Was it called The Great Circle? Because the reviews make it seem like it's Uncharted, like it's a performance narrative based game that like has like little bits of gameplay in between like the actual meat and story of the game, which it's not. That stuff is in there, but like largely the game is not a performance like narrative driven thing. Right. You know what I mean? Like it's like open world, like immersive sim. That is
not as
hardly mentioned. Yes, it's not a cinematic third person game. And like these reviews like kind of made it seem like it, but it feels like they had to, because you have to talk about the story and you have to talk about the performances and like the actual what the game is kind of comes secondary.
Whoa, that's a really good example.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying there. That's like a really good example, because there's a lot of little hooks that would trick you into talking about those things. The fact that it is Indiana Jones and it's based on a movie, the fact that the Uncharted games are largely inspired by Indiana Jones, the fact that the guy is the voice of Indiana Jones. There's all these little things that you. But then also
like the review will be like, the performances are great, the cutscenes are awesome, the writing's great, whatever, and then it'll be like, yeah, the combat's a little clunky. Moving on, and then blah, 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 and then they give it like a 9, and you're like, okay, so obviously, if just mentioning that the combat's not great is just a throwaway thing that kind of doesn't impact, like, again, the score of this game, I have to assume that that's not a really big deal, or that it's not a big part of the game, or that it's like easily ignorable. And then you play the game and you're like, this is like the bulk of the video game, you know? So it kind of gives you, in my opinion, like that is an example of like, it just kind of gives you the wrong impression of, it just gives you the wrong impression of sort of what the game is based on how the review is structured and what we expect out of a video game review.
Right. And I think like so much of with any kind of writing in this regard, not even just to video games, but when you're giving a critical read, I think it's so important to focus on effect. And I think how you demonstrate to a reader how something affected you, and this is my personal belief, is that like I'm writing a book right now, and I could just kind of like write in a very direct format to you, the reader, my ideology about life, the things I believe in, or I could come up with a story that I hope by the end of will land you in a place where you go, I am positioned in Jake's perspective. I feel what he wanted me to feel at the end of the story. And I do think that that is the job of the writer, of the critic. And I wonder sometimes, like, when I read a review, are they trying to position me in their perspective of playing the game, or a perspective that they had while playing the game? Or are they trying to report? Are they trying to, I keep coming back to this, but I think it really rings true. The idea of, you get a code early and you witness the game and you come back and you tell people what you saw. I feel like that is so like much of what I see out there. And I think one of the spiritual issues that I alluded to before. And I do think that part of the issue with the kind of witness approach is the the scores and the scores. The thing about the scores is we talked about this a little early, and I know this episode is running long, but the scores have become so meaningless to me, man. I feel like I have been overwhelmed lately by this game is an incredible blah 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 blah. It's an 8.5 to a 10.
Yes,
it just means nothing to me.
Last year there was something that scored an 85. I think maybe it was like Silent Hill 2 remake. It was like an 85 on Metacritic, and it was the 22nd best scoring game of the year. And it's like, what are we even doing?
Sometimes I feel like the review score is more a report about like how much money the game and time the game had than like how good the game is. Like, you know what I mean? Like, how polished is it? Like, how does it not have problems? I think is like what the review is telling you. You know what I mean? It's like you start at 100 and then every problem takes it down a little bit.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, that kind of thing. That kind of thing's really tough. I've been thinking about this a lot with Donkey Kong Bonanza. I think so complicated. My feelings.
Yeah. I think there will be a game that comes out that will spark this within us, and we'll talk about it.
Wow. Okay. Cool. Maybe a game that includes SpongeBob.
Perhaps it could be a game that includes SpongeBob. Yes.
That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah.
So as we wrap things up here, should we should we tell people what they get on the Patreon, or do they just find that out when they go to the Patreon?
I mean, we haven't even talked about what they get on the Patreon. So I think they should find. I mean, we've talked about it, but I think they should. I think that's a journey for them.
Oh, okay. So it's a little mystery, and now they're listening to this and they're going, "Man, I really want to know what they decided."
Yeah, and also it's like if you want more Jake and more Peter.
Yeah.
Uncut.
Dude.
That's not what I meant.
There's some good ones in there. No, uncut. Yeah. Definitely uncut.
Patreon. The link is in our description. Also, the QR code is correct now. Apologies for the people who have been scanning it. We were getting emails about it, and I was like, "What is this QR code that I'm getting an email about that doesn't work?" The one in our intro, outro, and YouTube like banner image works now. Apologies, that was my job, and I dropped the ball.
And maybe you're like me, and you had no idea that was a real QR code, and simply assumed that was a stock image. So now a delightful surprise for you in the following screen. If you would like to, if you're somehow not watching this on your phone, and then you want to pull your phone out and scan the QR code. Scan it. What a delightful. And here's the thing: I'm not even like a QR code guy, but it's just it's on the error page. So I was like, well, I have to put a QR code in here, and it scans for patreon.com/critical error. If you are a QR code guy, let me know in the comments below.